You have been taught to chase your desire as if it were somewhere outside you, waiting to be convinced, attracted, pulled, or earned. So you visualize, affirm, pray, script, meditate, and watch the world for signs, hoping reality will finally give you permission to feel complete. But the more you chase it, the more distant it becomes. Not because the desire is impossible, not because the universe is denying you, and not because you are failing the method. The chase itself is the confession that you are not it yet. This is the truth most manifestation teachings avoid. You do not attract what you want from the outside. You become the inner state that makes the outside reorganize itself. Today, we stop chasing the mirror and enter the cause. Think about what you have actually been doing. You have been treating your desire like an object sitting in another room, and you have been trying every possible way to convince that object to walk through the door toward you. You visualize it, you affirm it, you script it into being. You wait for signs. You adjust your method when the signs do not arrive. And when none of it works the way you hoped, you do not question the strategy. You question yourself. You wonder what you are doing wrong. You work harder at the same system that has already failed you. Here is what that system is actually built on. Every act of attracting assumes a distance. Every prayer that asks assumes a separation between you and the thing you are asking for. Every visualization that reaches toward the desired future confirms, at the level of the subconscious, that you are here and it is there. The effort itself encodes the gap. The method itself writes the command, and the command is always the same. I do not have this. I am trying to get this. I am not this yet. The subconscious does not respond to what you want. It responds to what you are currently declaring yourself to be. This is why effort often seems to push desire further away. It is not a punishment. It is a mirror report. The inner machinery is working perfectly. It is producing a reality that matches the identity broadcasting inside you. And the identity broadcasting inside you is not the one who has. It is the one who is working, reaching, hoping, and waiting. As long as desire feels like something you must earn or attract, you remain on the outside of it, pressing your face against the glass, wondering why it never opens. The problem was never the desire. The problem was never your worthiness. The problem was the position from which you were operating, the position of the one who does not yet have it. Before we go any further, I need you to do something that most people will resist. I need you to stop listening to this as information and start listening to it as a mirror. Because what we are about to examine together is not a theory about reality in general. It is a map of what is happening inside you, specifically, right now. And if you let it remain abstract, you will finish this video the same way you started it. So the commitment I am asking for is this: stay present with your own interior as we move through this together. As you hear each teaching in the next 45 minutes, I want you to notice where you still feel separate from what you want. Not in a painful way, not in a self-critical way, but with the calm precision of someone who is finally willing to see clearly. Notice where there is tension in your body when you think of your desire. Notice where there is longing, urgency, or grief. Notice where there is a quiet voice that says it has not happened yet, and maybe it never will. That tension is the evidence we are going to work with. That voice is the identity we are going to understand. You do not have to believe everything I say before you have heard it. You do not have to force yourself into a state you do not yet feel. What I am asking is simpler and more difficult than either of those things. I am asking you to be honest about where you are, not where you want to be. not where you pretend to be when you are repeating affirmations in the mirror, but where you actually are inside when the performance stops and the room is quiet. Because real transformation does not begin with a technique. It begins with an honest reading of the inner state you are currently living from. The moment you can see the state clearly, you can begin to change it. And when the state changes, the mirror changes. Not because you forced it, not because you earned it, but because the cause has shifted. That is what this video is about. That is what we are going to do together. Let me describe a cycle that you probably know more intimately than you would like to admit. It begins with desire. Something stirs in you. A vision, a longing, a clear sense of what your life could become. And for a moment, that vision feels real and close. You feel the warmth of it. You feel, briefly, like it is already on its way. And so you begin. You begin with hope. You apply the teachings. You set the intention. You do the visualization. You write the affirmations. You tell yourself that this time it is different. That this time you understand the principle correctly. That this time you are aligned, ready, open. And there is genuine energy in that beginning. It feels like movement. It feels like it is working. But then the checking starts. You look at your bank account, you look at your phone, you look at your physical circumstances, the relationship that has not shifted, the opportunity that has not arrived, the body that has not changed. And you look with a particular kind of attention, not the attention of curiosity, the attention of surveillance. You are watching reality to see if it is obeying. You are monitoring the mirror for evidence that the inner work is producing results. And when the evidence does not appear on your timeline, the hope begins to erode. The affirmations start to sound hollow. The visualization feels like you are pretending. A quiet but devastating thought begins to move underneath everything. This is not working. Maybe it never works. Maybe it works for other people, but not for me. And so the desperation rises. You try harder. You add more techniques. You search for the missing piece. You watch more videos. You read more books. You push. And then the cycle resets. A new wave of hope arrives, usually triggered by a new teaching or a fresh idea, and you start again from the same interior position you have always occupied. The cycle does not exhaust you because it is effortful, though it is. It exhausts you because every single step of it confirms the same underlying story. You are separate from what you want. You are working towards something that is not yet yours, and no amount of effort applied from that position will ever break the cycle, because the effort itself is generated by that position. The chase is not moving you toward the desire. The chase is the proof of the distance. Here is where we have to be precise, because this is the part that most teachings either skip entirely or deliver in a way that makes people feel blamed rather than liberated. The pain around your desire is not a sign that you are broken. It is not a punishment. It is not random suffering. The emotional charge you feel when you think about what you want, the ache, the urgency, the grief, the anger, the exhaustion, is a precise readout of the inner state you are currently living from. It is information, and it is the most honest information available to you. When you think of the relationship you want and you feel longing, what you are actually feeling is the identity of the one who does not have it. When you think of the financial situation you desire and you feel anxiety, what you are actually feeling is the identity of the one who is unsafe. When you think of the version of yourself you are trying to become and you feel inadequate or fraudulent, What you are actually feeling is the identity of the one who has not yet arrived. The emotion is not separate from the identity. The emotion is how the identity feels from the inside. This is not about blaming yourself. This is about reclaiming the place where change can begin. If you do not know which inner state you are operating from, you cannot change it. If you mistake the emotional charge for a fact about the world instead of reading it as a confession about your current inner position, you will keep trying to fix the outside when the instruction is to change the inside. The pain is not the enemy. The pain is the compass. Look at your desire right now, not as an idea, but as something you actually want. And notice what moves inside you. Is there peace? Is there certainty? Is there a settled sense that it is already so? Or is there reaching? Is there grasping? Is there a quiet undercurrent of fear that it will not come? Whatever is moving inside you as you hold that desire is the identity you are currently broadcasting. That is the state the subconscious is currently executing, and the outer world, the mirror, is faithfully producing a reality that matches it. What is remarkable about this, and I want you to sit with this for a moment, is that the desire itself contains the fulfillment. The desire is not proof that you are far from what you want. The desire is the signal of what is already possible for you at the level of consciousness. You cannot desire something that is outside the range of what your consciousness can access. But the way you hold the desire from lack or from fullness, from grasping or from ownership, from fear or from certainty, determines which version of reality the inner machinery will produce. Right now, the desire is being held from the wrong interior position, and that position, not the desire itself, is what we need to examine. The emotional charge does not just reveal which state you are in, it reveals how loyal you are to that state. Because the more intensely you feel the pain of not having, the more deeply the subconscious has accepted the identity of the one without. This is not your fault. These states are often built from years of lived experience, repeated disappointments, early conditioning, and emotional conclusions drawn from a world that seemed to confirm lack over and over again. The subconscious is loyal. It holds the commands it was given a long time ago, and it executes them faithfully. But loyalty to a state is not the same as being permanently bound to it. A state can be changed. An identity can be revised. And that revision begins not with a new technique, but with a clear seeing of the state that is currently in charge. The 6 paragraphs of this subsection have been delivered. But before we move into the deeper cause, I want to plant one question in you. If the pain is evidence of the identity, and the identity is producing the reality, then the real question is not how do I attract what I want. The real question is, who is the one that already has it? And why am I not living from that version of myself right now? That question is not rhetorical. It is the exact question this entire video was built to answer. But I want you to feel the weight of it before we reach the answer, because the weight is important. Most teachings hand you a technique before you have fully understood the problem. And a technique without understanding is just another layer of performance on top of an identity that has not changed. So, stay with the question for a moment. Who would you be if the desire were already fulfilled? Not what would you have? Who would you be? The reason this question is so difficult to answer honestly is that most people immediately translate it back into external terms. They say, I would have more money, so I would be relaxed. I would be in the relationship, so I would feel loved. I would have achieved the goal, so I would feel worthy. But notice what those answers assume. They assume the inner state is caused by the outer condition. They assume that if the external circumstance arrived, then the inner feeling would follow. And that assumption, that deeply held, rarely examined assumption is the root of why the desire has not yet crossed into physical reality. This is the open loop I want you to carry into the next section. What if the outer condition does not produce the inner state? What if the inner state produces the outer condition? What if the relationship does not make you feel loved, but the felt sense of being loved is what calls the relationship into form? What if the financial security does not produce the relaxation, but the genuine inner posture of security is what the outer world is waiting on? What if the problem has never been about what the world is or is not giving you, but about which inner state you are living from while you wait for the world to confirm it? Because if that is true, everything changes. The entire strategy reverses. You stop waiting for the condition to produce the feeling. You start generating the feeling as the cause of the condition. You stop trying to convince the outer world. You start commanding the inner world. You stop chasing the mirror. You become the one the mirror reflects. And that is not a metaphor. That is the operating principle of consciousness. That is how this works. Once you understand what is actually happening inside you, the viewer who has followed this closely is now at a threshold. They can feel the direction this is heading. They can sense the inversion about to take place. But they also feel the resistance, because this teaching, if taken seriously, requires a complete reorganization of where they have been placing their attention and their authority. That reorganization is what the next section is devoted to. And by the time we reach the other side of it, the question of how to become the desire, instead of chasing it, will no longer feel like philosophy. It will feel like something you already know how to do. Let us begin with the principle itself, stated plainly, before we deepen it. State precedes manifestation. What you see in your outer world is not the cause of your inner experience. Your inner experience is the cause of what appears in your outer world. This is not inspiration. This is not wishful thinking. This is the actual sequence of creation. The inner state is set first. The outer evidence appears second. The state is the instruction. The world is the response. Now let me be precise about what the word state means, because it is easy to collapse it into something too simple. When I say state, I do not mean a mood you perform for 10 minutes during a visualization session. I do not mean a feeling you manufacture on the surface, while the deeper layers of your subconscious are still running the old commands. A state, in the full sense of the word, is the total interior posture from which you are currently operating. It includes what you assume to be true about yourself. It includes how the world feels to you at the level beneath thought. It includes the emotional texture of your ordinary moments when you are not trying to manifest anything at all. Your self-concept is perhaps the most important dimension of the state. Self-concept is not your opinion of yourself. It is not the collection of affirmations you say in the morning. Self-concept is the deep assumption you carry about what you are, what you deserve, what is available to you, and what is natural for someone like you. It operates largely beneath awareness. It does not announce itself. It simply shapes the texture of your experience from the inside, in the same way that water shapes the direction of a current without being visible at the surface. When your self-concept holds an assumption of lack, the outer world organizes itself around that assumption. Not because the world is punishing you, because the world is a responsive field, and it responds to the dominant inner command it receives. If the dominant command is "I am someone who tries hard, but does not quite get what they want," the world will produce evidence of that story with extraordinary consistency. It will produce relationships that confirm it. It will produce financial patterns that reflect it. It will produce timing that seems to prove it, not because the story is true, but because the story is the active broadcast, and the outer world is a faithful receiver. This is what the principle of fulfilled consciousness means. It means that the subconscious does not wait for external evidence before deciding what to project. It projects first, from the assumption it is currently holding, and the projection becomes what the conscious mind experiences as reality. Change the assumption, and the projection changes. Occupy the identity of the one who already has, already is, already lives in the fulfilled state, and the subconscious begins executing a new command. The outer world begins reorganizing around the new broadcast, not instantly, always, not always in the way the mind expects, but with a reliability that, once you have experienced it, removes all doubt about the direction of causation. Most people spend their entire lives trying to change the projection by rearranging the screen. They adjust external circumstances, manage other people, force outcomes, accumulate external evidence to reassure the inner state. But the screen is not the projector. You cannot change the image by touching the screen. You can only change the image by changing what is moving through the projector. And the projector is your assumption, your self-concept, your identity, the deeply held, emotionally inhabited sense of who you are and what is real for you. The practical implication of this is both simple and demanding. If you want a different reality, you do not work on the reality. You work on the state from which you are currently experiencing reality. You examine the assumption. You identify the self-concept that is running the current pattern. You locate the identity you are living from at the level below performance and affirmation. And then, not by force, not by pretending, but by a genuine inner shift, you begin to inhabit the consciousness of the version of you for whom the desire is already present. This is what it means to become your desire instead of attracting it. It is not a trick. It is not a visualization hack. It is a genuine interior movement from one state of being to another, and it is the only change that the outer world actually responds to. Every other strategy, every other method, every other technique only works when it happens to produce this interior shift as a side effect. When it does not produce the shift, the technique fails, regardless of how precisely it is executed. The shift is the thing, the state is the cause. Everything else is the mirror. Neville Goddard spent decades teaching one essential idea, and he taught it with a precision and intensity that has outlasted virtually every other voice in the field of consciousness. The idea is this: you are already living in the fulfillment of your dominant assumptions about yourself, not in the future. Now, you are not waiting for your assumptions to become real. They are already real. They are producing your current experience of reality in real time. The question is never whether your inner state is manifesting. The question is only which inner state is currently doing the manifesting. Neville spoke frequently about what he called living from the end. This phrase has been repeated so often in manifestation circles that it has nearly lost its force. So, let me restore its precision. Living from the end does not mean pretending that the desired outcome has arrived when it clearly has not. It does not mean performing happiness over pain or manufacturing false certainty. Living from the end means identifying the inner state that corresponds to the fulfilled desire and inhabiting that state as your current reality at the level of feeling, assumption, and self-concept, regardless of what the senses currently report. This is the critical distinction. Neville understood that imagination, when operated from the level of identity rather than fantasy, is not escapism. It is the mechanism of creation itself. When you imagine your desire as something you are watching from the outside, wishing it would come to you, you are in fantasy. Fantasy observes desire from a distance, but when you imagine yourself as the one who already is, who already has, who already lives in the fulfilled condition, and you inhabit that imagination with enough emotional authenticity that it becomes your inner dwelling place, you have crossed from fantasy into identity. And identity is what the subconscious executes. The teaching that imagination creates reality is not a spiritual comfort. It is an operational statement. Consciousness does not experience the world neutrally and then react. Consciousness projects an interpretive field onto the world, and that field is shaped by the dominant assumption operating inside it. What you assume to be true about yourself becomes the lens through which all experience is filtered, organized, and returned to you as evidence. This is why two people can walk through the same circumstances and come out with entirely different experiences. They are not in the same consciousness. They are not broadcasting the same inner command. The outer world is the same. The inner world is different. And the inner world is what decides what the outer world means. This is also why Neville placed such emphasis on the word I am. Not as a spiritual formula to be repeated, but as a declaration of the current inner state. Whatever you attach to the words I am becomes an active command to the subconscious. I am lacking. I am unworthy. I am always late. I am someone good things happen to. I am already the one who has this. All of these are not just descriptions. They are instructions. They are inner declarations that the subconscious accepts without argument and executes without delay. The subconscious does not evaluate whether the I am statement is pleasant or painful. It simply accepts it as the current identity and begins producing a reality that matches it. When you understand this, the entire project of manifestation shifts. It is no longer about finding the right technique, or the right affirmation, or the right frequency. It is about locating the I am statement you are actually living from beneath the surface of your performance and making a deliberate decision to shift it, not to say a different affirmation while the deeper statement stays the same, but to actually revise the assumption at the level where it lives, which is the level of emotional occupancy, of felt identity, of what feels natural and true when you are not trying. Neville also taught the concept of revision, which is the inner practice of rewriting past events not in external history, but in imagination, so that the emotional residue those events left in the subconscious no longer defines the current self-concept. This matters enormously for the person who has tried to shift their state, but keeps getting pulled back to the old identity by emotional memory. The past is not fixed at the level of consciousness. The story the past tells about you can be revised, and when the revision is done with genuine inner feeling, the self-concept begins to shift, and the outer world begins to reflect the new command. The point I want you to hold from this section is not biographical. It is operational. The authority these teachings carry comes not from their historical origins, but from the accuracy with which they describe the actual mechanics of consciousness. State first, evidence second, assumption broadcasts, reality responds. Imagination, when inhabited as identity, is the source code of experience, and you have always had access to that source code. The only question is whether you have been operating it deliberately or allowing old assumptions to run it for you by default. I want you to picture a door, not an impressive door, not a grand or symbolic one, just an ordinary interior door standing between two rooms. On one side of the door is where you currently stand. On that side, the desire exists as something you can see but cannot touch. You can see it through the door frame. You can feel the pull of it. You can describe it in detail, You know exactly what it looks like on the other side. You have stood at this door for a long time, looking through, thinking about what it would feel like to walk through, rehearsing in your mind what it would mean to cross that threshold. Now here is what most manifestation teachings tell you to do. They tell you to focus on what is on the other side. Visualize it, feel it, call it toward you. Affirm that it is coming. As if the desire were a person on the other side of the door who needed to be convinced to walk through toward you. As if your job were to make yourself attractive enough, aligned enough, worthy enough, that the desire would finally cross the threshold and arrive where you are standing. But the door does not work that way. The door does not have a mechanism that brings the other side to you. The door has only one mechanism. You walk through it. And the moment you are on the other side, you are no longer looking at the desire from a distance. You are in the room where the desire lives. You are on the same side of the door as everything you wanted. And the room you left behind, the one where you were standing and reaching and waiting, that room becomes the one that is distant from you now. This is what becoming the desire means. It is not a metaphor about positive thinking. It is a description of a precise interior movement. The door is not between you and an external outcome. The door is between the identity of the one who does not have and the identity of the one who does. The threshold is the shift in self-concept, and the only way to cross it is to stop trying to pull the other side through the door toward you and instead move through the door yourself, in consciousness, in assumption, in the felt sense of who you are. Most people spend their entire lives standing at the door, doing increasingly elaborate things to try to attract what is on the other side. They knock on the door. They affirm in front of the door. They visualize what is on the other side while standing firmly on this side. And the strange and painful reality is that every single one of those activities, however sincere, keeps them exactly where they are. Because you cannot knock on a door you have already walked through. You cannot visualize the other side while you are standing in it. The very act of reaching confirms the position of the one who has not yet crossed. What does it feel like to walk through the door? This is the question that matters most, and it is the one that most people cannot answer honestly, not because they lack imagination, but because they have been trained to distrust their inner experience in the absence of outer confirmation. Walking through the door feels like a decision made in the interior. It feels like a quiet but fundamental reorientation of the self. It feels like the moment when the desire stops feeling like something you are pursuing and starts feeling like something you already are. It feels like naturalness, not performance. It feels like settling into a state rather than straining toward one. There is a specific quality to this inner movement that you will recognize if you have ever experienced it, even briefly. It is the quality of having, not hoping to have, not working toward having. Having. It is the difference between watching a fire from outside and sitting beside it in the warmth. Both people know the fire exists. Only one is actually in its presence. And the inner authority of the one who is sitting beside the fire is entirely different from the inner hunger of the one standing outside, wishing for warmth. The door is always there. This is the profound and slightly uncomfortable truth. It is always available. The threshold is not guarded. It is not earned. It is not waiting for you to become worthy enough to cross it. The only thing keeping you on the wrong side of it is the assumption that you are on the wrong side. The moment you revise that assumption at the level of genuine inner feeling, you have crossed. The room does not change. The door does not disappear. but you are now on the other side, and the mirror, the outer world, begins the process of catching up to the new position of your consciousness. Now let us address what most people do when the outer world has not yet caught up. Because this is where the transformation either takes root or collapses. This is the moment that separates the one who genuinely becomes from the one who performs becoming for a few days and then retreats back to the old identity when the evidence does not immediately confirm the shift. What you do in the gap between inner revision and outer reflection is the most consequential thing you will ever do in this practice. And what most people do in the gap is check. They look at the circumstances. They scan the mirror for proof. They ask, is it working? Is it showing up? Is this really happening? And on the surface, this seems entirely reasonable. If you have made an inner shift, why would you not look to see if it is reflecting? But here is why this particular act is so destructive to the new state. Every time you look at the outer world with the question, is it here yet? You are operating from the consciousness of the one who does not yet have it. The question itself is generated by lack, and the subconscious registers not the question, but the state behind the question. The old identity does not disappear the moment you decide to shift. It has roots. It has emotional momentum. It has years of reinforcement, and it is waiting patiently for you to glance back at the outer world and let the current conditions redefine who you are. The moment you look at your bank balance and let it tell you whether you are financially safe, the old identity steps back into the seat of authority. The moment you look at the relationship and let its current state tell you whether you are loved, the old assumption resumes command. The mirror has pulled you back through the door without your conscious permission, and you have allowed it because you gave the outer world the authority to define your inner state. This is the exact mechanism by which the old identity sustains itself. It does not fight you openly. It does not announce itself. It simply waits for you to check the evidence. Because the moment you check and the evidence does not confirm the new state, the survival instinct of the ego produces a thought. See, it is not real. The old way was right. This is not working. And that thought, if accepted, writes a new inner command. A command that reinforces the original lack-based identity and sends the inner machinery back to producing the same patterns it has always produced. External struggle does the same thing. When you force outcomes, push against circumstances, try to arrange the outer world to conform to your desire through sheer effort and willpower, you are operating from the assumption that the outer world is the cause and must be controlled. But remember, the outer world is not the cause. It is the effect. Trying to change the effect without changing the cause is not just inefficient. It is actively counterproductive because it deepens your psychological investment in the outer world as the source of your reality. Every act of forcing strengthens the belief that force is necessary. Every act of controlling strengthens the belief that control is the mechanism. And both force and control are children of the same parent identity, the one who does not yet have and is afraid. There is a particular form of external struggle that is almost universally mistaken for spiritual discipline. It is the constant refinement of technique. The searching for the right method, the right script, the right visualization formula, the right combination of spiritual practices that will finally produce the shift. I want to address this directly because many people watching this have been doing exactly this for years. The search for the right technique, when it is driven by desperation rather than genuine curiosity, is one of the most sophisticated disguises the lack identity wears. It feels productive. It feels spiritual. It feels like progress. but it is still fundamentally the activity of someone who does not yet believe that the shift is already within their reach. It is still the checking. It is still the reaching. It is still the one standing at the door, trying new ways of knocking instead of simply walking through. What does the old identity cost you beyond the frustration of continued lack? It costs you the energy you spend in the cycle. It costs you the clarity you lose when you are scanning the outer world for permission to feel complete. It costs you the present moment, which is the only moment in which the inner shift can actually occur. And perhaps most significantly, it costs you the experience of your own authority. Because every time you give the mirror the power to define your state, you are practicing powerlessness. You are rehearsing the identity of someone whose inner world is at the mercy of outer conditions. And the subconscious records every rehearsal. You have rehearsed that identity enough. This is not a criticism, it is an observation. And it is the observation that makes the next step possible. Let me now describe what it actually means to become the desire instead of chasing it. Not as a list of steps, because this is not a technique. It is a movement of consciousness, and it has a quality and a texture that must be felt, not just understood intellectually. The first thing to understand is that becoming begins with acceptance, not the acceptance of the current outer conditions as permanent, but the acceptance of the desired state as already real in consciousness. There is a difference between hoping a thing is true and accepting a thing as true. Hope still contains doubt. Hope is looking towards something not yet confirmed. Acceptance, in the sense I mean it here, is the inner posture of the one who has crossed the threshold. It is the quiet, settled, unargued with sense that this is so. Not because the outer evidence confirms it, but because the inner authority has declared it. This quality of acceptance has an unmistakable feeling. It is the opposite of straining. When you are straining toward a desire, there is effort in your inner landscape. There is a quality of reaching, of not yetness, of urgency mixed with doubt. But when you have moved into genuine inner acceptance, the straining stops. The reaching stops. Not because you have given up on the desire, but because you are no longer outside of it, you are inside it. And from the inside, there is nothing to reach toward. The next dimension of becoming is what we might call emotional occupancy. This is different from emotional performance. Emotional performance is what happens when you try to feel excited or grateful about a desire, while the deeper layer of your consciousness still holds the old assumption. Emotional occupancy is what happens when the deeper layer itself shifts. It is when the feeling of the fulfilled state becomes the natural texture of your inner experience. Not a sensation you have to manufacture, but a quality of consciousness you inhabit. How do you achieve emotional occupancy without performance? This is the question that deserves the most honest answer. You do not achieve it by forcing a feeling. You achieve it by removing the obstacles to the feeling, by examining which thoughts, which habitual inner conversations, which recurring beliefs are actively maintaining the lack-based identity. And then, not by fighting those thoughts, but by withdrawing your agreement with them. When the thought arises that says you cannot have this, you do not argue with it. You simply do not grant it your operant power. You notice it as an old transmission from an old state, and you return your attention to the consciousness of the fulfilled self. Inner speech is one of the most powerful and most neglected tools in this work. What you say to yourself, below the level of formal affirmations, in the constant internal monologue of the ordinary day, is one of the primary mechanisms by which the self-concept is maintained. If your inner speech throughout the day is characterized by lack, by the absence of what you want, by commentary that confirms the old identity, then no amount of formal visualization will override it. The formal practice is 2 minutes. The inner speech is 16 hours. Becoming requires that the inner speech begins to shift, not all at once, not by force, but by a growing awareness of what you are saying to yourself when you are not paying attention, and a deliberate, gentle redirection toward the voice of the one who already is. The feeling of naturalness is perhaps the clearest signal that becoming is occurring. When you first try to inhabit the fulfilled state, it may feel strange. It may feel like you are pretending. It may feel presumptuous, almost arrogant, to feel complete before the outer world has confirmed the completeness. But this strangeness is not evidence that the process is not working. It is evidence that the new identity is unfamiliar. Everything unfamiliar feels strange at first. The question is not whether it feels natural immediately. The question is whether you are willing to stay in the new state long enough for it to become natural. Because naturalness, in terms of inner states, simply means familiarity. And familiarity comes from repetition, not from outer confirmation. There is a practice that emerges from all of this that I want to describe carefully. It is the practice of dwelling. Neville Goddard spoke of it. A Course in Miracles describes it in its own language. It is the practice of returning throughout the ordinary day to the feeling state of the fulfilled self. Not in elaborate sessions, not in long rituals, but in small, repeated, genuine inner returns. A moment of pausing and inhabiting the consciousness of the one who has already crossed the threshold. A moment of inner speech that comes from the new identity. A moment of allowing the emotional texture of fulfillment to be present in the body, in the breath, in the quality of attention. These moments, accumulated over time, do not just produce a feeling. They revise the self-concept. They retrain the subconscious. They replace the old command with a new one. The inner operation is not dramatic. It does not look like anything from the outside. It does not require a special environment or a dedicated hour. It requires only a willingness to return, again and again, to the inner state of the one who has already become what they desire. Each return is a vote cast for the new identity. Each moment of genuine emotional occupancy is a signal sent to the inner machinery. And the inner machinery, which has always been faithful, begins to execute the new command. I want to address the objection that is almost certainly alive in you right now. Because it would be dishonest of me to teach this and not speak directly to the thing that undermines it. You have shifted the inner state, or at least you have made a genuine attempt. And then you look at the outer world, and the outer world looks the same. The account balance has not changed. The person has not called. The circumstances are what they were. And the question rises up with real force. How long am I supposed to hold the new state before the world shows me it is working? This is a legitimate question. It deserves a precise answer. The delay between inner shift and outer reflection is real, and it varies. It is not a sign that the inner work is not working. It is the natural latency that exists between the updating of an inner command and the reorganization of physical circumstances around that command. The physical world does not move at the speed of thought. It moves through time, through events, through other people's choices, through structural conditions that are already in motion. The inner cause shifts first. The outer effect follows. But follow means in time, not instantly. Think of it this way. When a ship changes its course, it does not instantly appear in a different location on the ocean. The new heading is set. the wheel is turned. But the ship must travel the distance from its current position to its new destination. Someone watching the ship from the shore in the first moments after the course change would see no difference. They would see the ship moving in the old direction, because it is. But the heading has changed, and given enough time and continued commitment to the new heading, the destination will be entirely different. Your circumstances are the ship that is still completing the momentum of the old heading. The new heading has been set inside, in consciousness. The evidence of the new direction will appear, but it appears at the pace of physical reality, not the pace of inner declaration. And this is precisely why loyalty to the new state during the delay is the most important thing you will ever practice. Because the delay is exactly when the old identity attempts to reassume control. The delay is when doubt sounds most rational. The delay is when giving up feels most justified. What most people do during the delay is interpret the absence of outer evidence as proof that the inner work did not take hold. They use the unchanged mirror as data about the validity of the teaching. But the mirror is always reflecting a state that was set some time ago. You are not seeing your current inner state in the mirror. You are seeing the reflection of the state you have been most consistently occupying over time. This means that the outer world, even after a genuine inner shift, will continue to show the old pattern for a period, not because the shift did not happen, but because physical reality has a natural lag. The practice during the delay is not to stare into the mirror and demand confirmation. The practice is to remain in the new identity as if the confirmation were already present, not by denying what the senses show. You do not have to pretend your circumstances are different from what they are. But you do not have to give your circumstances the authority to define your inner state. You can observe the old reflection without letting it pull you back through the door. You can acknowledge what the physical world is currently showing while simultaneously knowing, at the level of assumption, that the inner command has changed and the world is in the process of catching up. This is not blind faith. It is applied understanding of the actual mechanics of consciousness. It is the posture of the engineer who has reset the source code and is waiting, without panic, for the system to reboot. The code has been changed. The system will reflect the change. The time between the reset and the new output is not evidence of failure. It is evidence of how systems work. Let us walk back through the complete map, because by now you have been through the full arc of this teaching, and there is value in seeing it all at once, clearly, so that it becomes something you can carry out of this video and apply with precision. You began this video in a particular position, the position of the one who has been trying to attract the desire from the outside. You had been visualizing, affirming, checking, waiting, and managing your hope through cycles of effort and disappointment. And now you understand why that cycle does not break itself. Because every act of chasing, every act of reaching, every act of checking the mirror for permission is generated by an identity that has not yet crossed the threshold. It is the activity of the one who does not have. And the activity of the one who does not have reproduces, consistently and faithfully, the reality of not having. The pain you feel around your desire is not random. It is a precise readout of the inner state you are operating from. The ache, the urgency, the anxiety, the disappointment, these are not obstacles to manifestation. They are information about which identity is currently in the projector's seat. They tell you, with extraordinary accuracy, which assumption the subconscious is executing. And because they tell you, they are not the problem. They are the beginning of the solution. State, precedes manifestation. This is the central principle, and it does not bend. The outer world does not produce the inner state. The inner state produces the outer world. The mirror does not have authority over the cause. The cause has authority over the mirror. The assumption, the self-concept, the deep and emotionally inhabited sense of who you are is what the inner machinery executes. Change the assumption at the level of genuine inner feeling, and the machinery begins executing a new command. The outer world begins the process of reorganizing around the new broadcast. The door is the metaphor for the threshold between the identity of the one without and the identity of the one who already is. The desire is not across the room waiting to be attracted. It is on the other side of a door you can walk through right now in consciousness, by inhabiting the felt sense of the fulfilled self without waiting for outer permission to do so. The check-in, the forcing, the scanning for evidence, all of these push you back through the door each time. Remaining on the side of the one who has, during the delay, during the silence of the outer world, is the practice. The inner operation is not a list of techniques. It is a genuine interior movement from one state to another. It includes inner acceptance, emotional occupancy, revised inner speech, and the practice of dwelling in the consciousness of the fulfilled self throughout the ordinary moments of the day. None of this is performance. All of it is identity work. And identity work is the only category of change that the outer world actually responds to at the level of its structure. This is the complete map. You do not attract what you want. You express what you are. And what you are is determined not by what the outer world shows you, but by which inner state you are willing to occupy as your current reality. You have moved through something real in this video. Not just an idea, but a reorientation. And I want to give that reorientation a voice, because the act of putting language to a new identity is itself a small but significant act of inner revision. So before we close, I want to invite you to do something in the comment section below. Write this mantra, or write your own version of it that feels true from where you are right now. I am no longer chasing. I am becoming. Write it below. Not as a performance for other people watching. Write it as a declaration to your own subconscious. Because the comment section of a video is a strange and underestimated place to do inner work. But language is language. An inner declaration made in writing carries weight. The subconscious does not distinguish between a declaration made in silence and a declaration made in text. It responds to what it receives. And if you want to write your own version of the mantra, write the words that most precisely capture the shift you felt during this video. Write the sentence that you know in your interior is true, even if the outer world has not confirmed it yet. Write from the side of the door you have decided to occupy. Write from the identity that has already crossed. Not as a wish, not as a hope, as a present tense declaration of the self you have chosen to be. There is also something important I want to say about the community of people who gather in the comments of this channel. Many of them are in the same interior territory you are navigating. They have tried the surface methods. They have felt the exhaustion of the cycle. They are here because they are ready for something that goes deeper. When you write your mantra below, you are not just speaking to your own subconscious. You are contributing to a collective field of people who are in the process of crossing the threshold. That is not nothing. That is the kind of witness that reinforces new identity. Watch what happens after you write it. Not in the outer world, not yet. Watch what happens inside you. Notice whether it feels like reaching or like arriving. Notice whether it feels like performance or like recognition, because that internal feedback is live information about where the shift has taken hold and where there is still more to do. The comment is not the end of the inner work. It is a checkpoint within it. I want to say clearly, the work does not end when this video ends. The inner operation described in this video is not a one-time event. It is a recurring practice. Every morning you wake into the old pattern's territory. Every trigger pulls at the old identity. Every moment of checking the mirror is an opportunity to either grant the outer world its old authority or to remain in the consciousness of the one who has already become. The mantra you write today is a reminder you can return to, a marker on the threshold you are learning to stand on. So write it. I am no longer chasing. I am becoming. Or write whatever version of that truth is most alive in you. And know that in writing it, you are not wishing for a future. You are declaring a present. You are speaking from the side of the door where the desire already lives. We began this video with a single observation, that you had been taught to chase your desire as if it were waiting somewhere outside you to be convinced, attracted, or earned. You had been treating the mirror as if it were the cause, and reaching toward the reflection as if the reflection could reach back. And we asked the question that changed the entire direction. What if you stopped chasing and became instead? Now you have the answer, not as a theory, as an operational understanding of how consciousness works and what manifestation actually is. You do not attract what you want. You express what you are. The desire is not across the room. It is on the other side of a threshold in your own consciousness. And the only way across is to become the one who has already crossed in assumption, in feeling, in self-concept, in the texture of your ordinary inner life. The mirror does not lead. The mirror follows, and it follows faithfully once the cause has genuinely shifted. If what you encountered in this video has opened something in you, if you felt the teaching land in a way that other things have not quite reached, then what you are feeling right now is the beginning of a different relationship with your own consciousness. And there is more. This channel exists to take you through the full depth of that relationship, layer by layer, teaching by teaching, doorway by doorway. The next video on this channel is already waiting for you, and it picks up precisely where this one leaves off, at the threshold of the next interior territory you need to cross. Subscribe so that it reaches you when you are ready. The cause is not outside you. It never was. And now that you know where to look, nothing about your reality needs to stay the same.